welcome our viewers here in Nigeria and around the world to the first Monetary Policy Committee meeting, decision day of Nigeria. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching. Sticking by. Let's bring in on our panel very quickly, live from Abuja, Nigeria's political capital. We're bringing in Associate Professor of Finance at Nasarawa State University. Professor Uche Waleke is live here with me in Abuja, and down at China's global headquarters in Lagos, Michael Famoroti, who is the chief economist at the Tiva Capital Management, Peter Moses, who is a research analyst with Codros Capital, and the head of research at Afrinvest, Robert Tomotude. Thank you, gentlemen. Let's start from Lagos, where the central bank governor is now seated here in Abuja. They're ready to read his minutes, the consideration of the committee, and we expect that to happen within the next 10 minutes, 2:15 local time was the time set. So we have a few minutes, gentlemen, to consider a few things. I'm going to start with you, Robert Tomotude. On November the 10th last year, the governor delivered a very lengthy speech at the dinner time at the Institute of Bankers, CIBN annual dinner. And I'm going to read very quickly part of what he says. He says, I must be quick to remind us that although the current developments in macroeconomy are welcome, we as leaders and policymakers must neither become complacent nor overconfident. At the same time, he signaled monetary policy easing starting in 2018. Do you remember that speech? What does this say about where we think the MPC will be going in the current year?
Well, I think that the governor was just trying to state the obvious. You know, remember that after the economy managed to recover from that recession, as at the last MPC meeting, which was held, the economy had just recorded the second consecutive quarter of positive GDP growth, you know, and inflation, you know, had recorded, I think as at then, about the 9th consecutive decline, you know, when inflation was still about 15.9. And of course, all of these stories were made positive because of the recovery that we saw in global oil prices, you know, and of course, the production disruptions, which were more or less tapered, you know, within the domestic economy. All of this buoyed and supported, you know, the revenue of government. You know, don't let us forget that we still have an economy that is majorly oil dependent, you know, even though the government, you know, from the fiscal side, is still trying to see how to diversify government's revenue, you know, but we still have an economy that is still mainly oil dependent. So what the governor was trying to say then is everything seems positive, you know, from the external sector, we've recorded positive current account balance, you know, we've seen recovery in terms of funds flow, you know, into the economy, you know, from 2014, when we recorded, I think, over $20 billion in capital importation. You see that drop up to, like, I think about $5 billion, you know, as at 2016. You know, and you've seen the recovery in 2017. You know, we recorded about $12 billion in terms of capital, you know, importation. The governor was trying to say all of these seems positive, you know, but let's not get carried away. You know, anything that could cause a sudden stop in the so-called capital flow, you know, could be as a result of fragility in global oil markets. You know, so there are still needs to put in place policies that will ensure that the economy moves away from oil, you know, because for as much as we remain dependent on oil, this will continue to anchor monetary policy, you know, and I mean, from that perspective, towing the way of easing at this time, you know, may not necessarily be optimal, you know, for monetary policy at this time. In an environment where you see global systemic central banks, you know, tightening, you know, we saw the the March meeting of the FOMC, you know, where rates were hiked again, and now within the band of 1.5 to 1.75, you know, percent. You know, this has positives, you know, for their own economy. In fact, bond yields on the average for 2018 in the U.S. economy had returned over 15%, you know, whereas we have an economy here where our average bond yield, when you track by the major indices that are tracking the domestic bond market, has done barely 2% year to date. So all of these are risk factors that the committee will be considering, that any major policy shift away from tightening at this time may not necessarily be optimal for the economy. And I think these were the points the governor was trying to make at this time.
Yes, Robert, thank you very much. Let's move, get a bit, you're just touching on the market, and that brings us, let's move the needle to Peter Boses from Codros Capital. What have we seen since the last MPC, as far as the markets are concerned? The governor was very optimistic when he spoke about the markets last November, but since then we've seen the market rally to the end of 2017. We started 2018 very decently, but now we're seeing the bears chasing the bulls on the market, on Broad Street. What do we see? How do you think this will be part of the considerations looking at the last 2 months of the marketplace when these MPC folks are sitting and they are making the announcement in the next few minutes?
Thank you, Bosley. I think for markets, we need to look at it from 2 different perspectives. Basically, for the traditional asset classes, we look at equities and, of course, fixed income. For equities market, you tend to see the impact of monetary policy decisions and monetary policy statements, just as we have for any other market, even in the global space. The impact on equities is usually a fallout of the impact on fixed income instruments. For instance, you remember, just as Robert, mentioned, 10-year Treasury bill yield, for instance, in the U.S. has been responding significantly to, the Fed rate hike. And in cases where we saw an approximate value of around 3%, we saw significant sell-offs, on Wall Street. So in Nigeria, I think since the last NPC meeting, since we've not had any significant shift in monetary policy, and we've had a consistent guidance from the CBN governor, which started last year, which was actually a guidance towards easing on the horizon, and the tone has actually not changed. The question has only remained at what point and to what extent, will the rate cut actually be. I think equities market has significantly been a mirror image of the broader economy, which is actually expected. Since the last MPC meeting, just as the CBN governor alluded to, the fact that economic activities have picked up significantly, growth rebounded positively in Q4 2017. So far this year, leading indicators, the PMI, as we've reported, have been showing significant performance compared to, what we've had in previous years. And if you look at corporate performance as well, from our Q4 2017 results that were released, positive. But then, you may still want to ask the question that how come we did not see so much reactions? I think for equities, it was purely a case of investors taking profits on the significant gains that we saw in 2017. Do not forget, around 42%, approximately thereabouts. And then for the first month of the year, that is January, significant, rally as well, up to around 16%. It was only expected at the levels at which prices were and valuations being significantly stretched that investors were going to take, some profit on those particular gains. Not really minding what corporate earnings were more or less looking like, more so that most investors had factored those into their positions, coming into 2017. But I think for fixed income space, it has been significantly, a play out of 2-3 different factors.
Peter, we've got to cut off at this point. We thank you very much. We'll come back to you panelists. Now the governor of the central bank started reading his communique. Let's take a listen, gentlemen. We'll be right back.